Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 2. Today we're going to learn about conditional statements. So it's adding basic logic to our code. And it starts off with the if-else statement. Now rather than me using this slide, let me go ahead and try it in code. So it's easy. What if we have if and then parentheses and we give it a value of true, then it'll run whatever's inside of this code. Everything works. Oh, that was a mistake. So, if whatever's inside this parentheses is true, and I gave it true, so it has to be true, then it will run whatever's inside of these curly brackets. Now, we're going to try typing false here. You notice it no longer logs it to the console. So, if we add an else statement afterwards with no parentheses, and we log something else, you gave me false, then it will run this code. And you could do some more things down here, like, creating variables. So again, if whatever is in here is true, it will run the first stuff. If it's false, it'll run whatever's in this else block. Now the next thing we're going to learn about are Boolean operators. How do we compare different things? This is how we add real logic to our code. Now again, I'm going to ignore the slides and then just start coding. And I think I'm going to continue doing that actually. So instead of saying if true, what if we write if 3 is greater than 2? Then we can log math works. I'm going to get rid of this line. So if 3 is greater than 2, well, that comes out to true. 3 is greater than 2. So it does whatever's in this code. Now if we type in 1 is greater than 2, that comes out to false. Make sense? Now what if you want to do less than? Well, that's easy, you type in the less than sign. But what if you want to compare whether or not they're equal? If 1 equals 2. And you'll notice I use 2 equal signs here, because if we use 1 equal sign, the compiler will think, hey, we're putting the value of 2 inside of the variable called 1. 1 equal sign is used for variable assignment, but we want to use 2 to compare numbers. So this checks if these two items are equal, and they're obviously not. Now, what if we want to do if whether or not they're not equal? So this is not equals. It's an exclamation mark and then an equal sign. It checks if these two are not equal, and they're not, so math works. Now what if you want to do greater than or equal to? So you could type in greater than and then an equal sign to check if they're greater than or equal to. Now if you type in 2, it'll work, and if you type in 3, it'll work. And this also works with less than. Now what if you want to compare strings to numbers, or just strings to strings? If Bob equals Bob, well, that works. So I guess math works. Now you can do not equals as well. But here's where things get tricky. What if you want to compare 15 to 15? Will these two be equal, even though one is a number and one is a string? Well, it actually makes them equal, which is really weird. This is a number and this is a string. What if you want to do an extra check? Make sure they're also both numbers or both strings. Well, you could do a third equal sign. This guarantees that, hey, are these the exact same thing? Not just the same value, but the exact same thing. And that's what three equal signs does. I'm going to ignore the slides from now on. What is next? Well, what if you want to use a variable? Let x equals 5. Let x equal 5. And then you can also use x in here. If x equals 5. That's cool and all. Now what's next? Well, we can use logical operators. What are logical operators? Well, they're and okay. Alright, that's cool and all, but what's next? Well, there are also things called logical operators. They combine Boolean operators. So we can check, hey, is 1 equal to 2, but also we want to check if 2 is equal to 2, but also is 3 equal to 3? This is kind of a lame example. Here, let me try a different one. Let age equal, and then set it to your age. Oh, whoa. And then equal 17. Well, let's check if age is greater than 12 and age is less than 20, then we'll say you are a teenager. And then otherwise, you are not a teenager. Now you'll notice I use 2 ampersand signs. Those are on top of the number 7 on your keyboard. So this means and. Both of this statement or this operator and this operator have to be true in order for the total thing to come out to true. So you have to be older than 12 and less than 20 in order to be a teenager. Well, what if you want to check if either of them are true? Then you do these two symbols. Now these are above your enter key and under your backspace key. It's the /, it's shift /. Or yeah, I think that's a /. It might be the backslash. But yeah, it's shift, the key between your backspace and enter key on the very right. On most keyboards. I'm not sure for all keyboards. So this checks if either of these are true and then gives you true or false. Now what else can we do? We can also use not. What if you want to check if what if you want to check the opposite of something? So if you do not age is greater than 12, then it'll check whether or not age is greater than 12. It is, so this is true, and then not, or this exclamation mark, will give you the opposite, so it'll give you false. You are not a teenager. So why don't we type out some comments to remember everything we wrote. I'm going to write a multi-line comment. So, or actually, we're going to use it to remember all of the operators we just learned. Yeah, and then you can save this to your projects later. So, to check if things are equal, checks if equal. We're going to use 2 equal signs. If things are not equal, checks if not equal. We're going to use the exclamation mark and then the equal sign. Greater than, checks if greater. Less than, checks if less. Oh no. If less. And then greater than equal to, checks greater / equal. And then and then less equal, checks less equal. Those are our Boolean operators. Now our logical operators are and, checks if both are true, or checks if either are true, and then not does the opposite. And we're going to end that off. And then you can go ahead and save this as your little cheat sheet to remember all the operators. Now what's next? Well, we also have a couple more things, such as the else if statement and then the ternary operator. What does the else if statement do? Well, if you want to check multiple things. So you want to check if you're greater than 12, and if you are greater than 12, do something, but also if you're not greater than 12, let's say you're less than 12, you can type in else if age equals 6. This is really messy. Hold on. That goes there, that goes there. Okay, else if age equals 6. So, if you're greater than 12, you are pretty old. If you're not greater than 12, you're a kid. Log. Check if you're 6 years old. You are 6. And then if you're not 6 years old, but you're less than 12, then you are not. You are a kid, but not 6 years old. So that's if you want to check multiple things, but not on the same line. You use the else if statement with another set of parentheses. Now, coders like shortcuts, so we're going to learn about the ternary operator. What if we want to assign a value based on a Boolean variable, such as this? Let is sky blue equal true. Now, I'm going to write out the long version and then the ternary operator, which makes it what you wrote shorter. Let me just do it. So let's say you want to have where you want to create a variable called age. We're going to create it without anything inside without anything inside. So if is sky blue, then we're going to set age to 10. If the sky is blue, you're 10 years old. But if the sky isn't blue, you're going to be 20 years old. Now, how would you, this is pretty long. This is 5 lines of code. How would you shorten all of this? So you already have the is sky blue variable. So what if you want to set age? I'm going to do it age 2 because we have 2 variables called age now. Let age 2 equal, you start out by typing your Boolean variable, whether or not it's true or false, and then a question mark. And then you want to write out the value if this Boolean variable is true, and then a colon, and then the value you want it to be if the Boolean variable is false. So I'm going to go over this one more time. So we have this Boolean variable. That's true, right? The sky is blue. And let's say we want to change age to either, or age 2 to either 10 or 20. We want it to be 10 if the sky is blue, and we want it to be 20 if the sky isn't blue. So we write that by writing let age 2 equal, first off the Boolean variable, then a question mark, then the value we want if this is true, if this Boolean variable is true, and then the value we want if this is false. So this is equivalent to writing true, right? Because is sky blue is just true. So if age2, or we're gonna console, or we're gonna log age 2, and you'll notice, I already wrote age up here, so I'm gonna comment this out. So we notice age 2 is 10 because this is true. Now if this is false, then age will become 20. And you'll notice that this one line will not only encapsulate these 5 lines over here, but it has the same ordering too. I'm going to write is sky blue again. It first creates the variable, right? Then we have the Boolean variable first. You'll notice it comes first. Then we have the value we want if it's true, and then the value we want if it's false. So you'll notice that this one line has the same structure as this 5-line piece of code. So it's a lot shorter and it's pretty simple. Next up is the switch statement. So the switch statement again makes your code, I guess, a little bit shorter, but it will do certain things based on one given variable, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to delete all this code because I don't need it anymore, but you should totally save it just in case you want to use it again. So how does the switch statement work? Let's say you rolled a dice and you want you're playing a game. You roll a dice. Let dice roll equal 5, right? And I'll show you guys how to create random variables later, or give a variable a random number. So let's say you rolled a 5, and you want to do something in the game based on whatever you rolled. So you type in switch and then whatever roll you got, and then these curly brackets. So let's say you want to do it for case 1, right? What if you rolled a 1? Case 1. You type in case 1 and then a colon. Then you type out the code you want. Console.log. You rolled a 1. And then to end off this piece of code, you type in break. And then a semicolon. Then what if you rolled a 2? You do the same thing. You got points. Let's say in this game you get points if you roll a 2. Then you write break. Then let's jump to case 5. Console.log. You can get what case 3 and 4 will look like. You rolled a 5. More points. And then break. And then what if you rolled a dice but it goes all horrible, and then you got a tricked die and you got like a 7 or something, and you don't know what the tricked die will give you. It might give you a 20, it might give you a 50, so you write in default. Default will be the case that it's the backup case. It'll run if you get a value that you haven't accounted for. You are cheating. And then break. So bam, this is our switch statement. And the alternative would to write out this. If dice roll equals case or equals 1, and then you do that, and then else if dice roll equals 2, and then you get the point. This is basically the same thing as this. I guess this is technically a little bit shorter, so that's why you would use it. Now before we start reviewing, let's look at some weird cases. Oh, I'm gonna delete all this. What if you want to check, usually you put a Boolean variable inside of this if statement, right? I'm gonna write an if else. Console.log weird, and then console.log what? Okay, it doesn't really matter. These just tell us whether or not the value we give it are true or false. So you'll notice, usually you write true or false here, but you can actually, like in code, you can break a lot of rules. What if you put a string or something in here? Bob. Is Bob true or false? And you'll notice it's true because the true code runs, right? It's not in the else. You don't run the else code. You run the if code inside of these curly brackets. So you notice Bob is true. Now, if you caught a glimpse from earlier, if I have an empty string, it counts as false. Now let's try numbers. 32. Is 32 true or false? It's true. What about 33? What about -1? These are all true. And if you're a little bit creative, you'll notice that 0 is the only false number. So, or you can even try 0.00. 0 is the only false number. So, now, that's cool and all, but what if we try something, or we could try characters too. That's pretty lame. Yeah, you'll notice they're all true. Let's try something else. What if we have an undefined variable again? Is this true or false? And you'll notice, if you type it in, you get false. So undefined variables are false, which is pretty neat, because now, what if you created a variable and you want to do something with it, but you don't actually know whether or not you gave it a value yet? Now you can check whether or not you gave it a value. If you can say if that variable, and if it has a value, you could do something with it. Otherwise, if you didn't give it a value yet, you can probably give it a value now. So you can see the use cases of these kind of truthy and falsy statements. That's what JavaScript users like to say. Numbers like 32 or 43, they're truthy, while 0 is falsy. It's not false, but it's falsy, right? It's kind of like false, and it will give you false. The compiler will give you false. So those are some weird exceptions. Now let's review. You can use if, else, and else if to add logic to your code. You check a condition that evaluates to true or false, and then you execute whatever is inside the curly brackets based on whether or not you were given true or false. You can use Boolean operators to check if numbers or strings are less than or greater than or equal to each other or not equal to each other, and then you can also use logical operators to combine and mix and match true and false statements. You could use the ternary operator or the switch statement to make your code cleaner and more concise and more efficient. And there are also some weird exceptions that you might encounter when dealing with booleans or true or false, like truthy or falsy values. Now that basically wraps up lesson 2. I hope you guys learned a lot. Go ahead and practice using what you've learned from this lesson and the last lesson before it, because you will be using these things that you've learned very, very, very often. So yes, good luck, practice, try breaking the system, try to come to some weird examples or weird outputs. Try and break your code essentially. That's basically it, and have fun, keep on coding.